Cool. I had everything set up and then I realized, no I didn't, my mic wasn't plugged in. Alright, give me a minute and a half, and then we'll get started. My setup is being a little ornery today. I don't think we'll have any major issues, but in case we do, I'm sorry in advance. I'm going to read chapter 28 today. I know I keep promising a second reading and then not getting to it. It's just been a very busy week in real life. But anyway, I'm going to read chapter 28 today and then save 29 and 30 for next week, and then the book is over. This was a long one. Kind of took me a while to get through this one compared to some of the other full-length books we've read. Let me adjust my mic. It's starting to droop. Hang on. Ugh, like I said, my setup is just not being respectful today. Okay, well, we'll make do. I'm sure it's nothing too dramatic. The Canticle for Leibowitz, chapter 28. Compline had been sung, but the abbot stayed on in the church, kneeling alone in the gloom of evening. Domine mundorum omnium factor, parsuris esto imprimis eis fidis evantibus ad sideria calicorum victis difficilior. He prayed for Brother Joshua's group, for the men who had gone to take a starship and climb the heavens into a vaster uncertainty than any uncertainty faced by man on earth. They'd want much praying for. None was more susceptible than the wanderer to the ills that afflict the spirit, to torture. Let's try that again. None was more susceptible than the wanderer to the ills that afflict the spirit, to torture faith and nag a belief, harrowing the mind with doubts. At home, on earth, conscience had its overseers and its exterior taskmasters, but abroad the conscience was alone, torn between lord and foe. Let them be incorruptible, he prayed. Let them hold true to the way of the order. Dr. Kors found him in the church at midnight and beckoned him quietly outside. The physician looked haggard and wholly unnerved. I just broke my promise, he stated challengingly. The abbot was silent. Proud of it? He asked at last. Not especially. They walked toward the mobile unit and stopped in the bath of bluish light that spilled out its entrance. The medic's lab jacket was soaked with sweat, and he dried his forehead on his lab sleeve. Zerchi watched him with that pity one might feel for the lost. We'll leave at once, of course, said Kors. I thought I'd tell you. He turned to enter the mobile unit. Wait a minute, the priest said. You'll tell me the rest. Will I? The challenging tone once again. Why? So you can go threaten hellfire. She's sick enough now, and so's the child. I'll tell you nothing. You already have. I know who you mean. The child, too, I suppose. Kors hesitated. Radiation sickness. Flash burns. The woman has a broken hip. The father's dead. The fillings in the woman's teeth are radioactive. The child almost glows in the dark. Vomiting shortly after the blast. Nausea. Anemia. Rotten follicles. Blind in one eye. The child cries constantly because of the burns. How they survived the shockwave is hard to understand. I can't do anything for them, except the Ukrem team. I've seen them. Then you know why I broke the promise. I have to live with myself afterwards, man. I don't want to live as the torturer of that woman and that child. Pleasanter to live as their murderer instead. You're beyond reasonable argument. What did you tell her? If you love her child, spare her the agony. Go to sleep mercifully, as quick as you can. That's all. We'll leave immediately. We've finished with the radiation cases and the worst of the others. It won't hurt the rest of them to walk a couple of miles. There aren't any more critical dosage cases. Zurchi stalked away, then stopped and called back. Finish, he croaked. Finish and then get out. If I see you again, I'm afraid of what I'll do. Kors spat. I don't like being here any better than you like having me. We'll go now, thanks. He found the woman lying on a cot with the child in the corridor of the overcrowded guest house. They huddled together under a blanket, and both were crying. The building smelled of death and antiseptic. She looked up at his vague silhouette against the light. Father? Her voice was frightened. Yes? We're done for. See? See what they gave me? He could see nothing, but he heard her fingers pick at the edge of paper, the red ticket. He could find no voice to speak to her. He came to stand over the cot. He fished in his pocket and brought out a rosary. She heard the rattle of the beads and groped for it. You know what it is? Certainly, Father. Then keep it. Use it. Thank you. Bear it and pray. I know what I have to do. Don't be an accomplice. For the love of God, child, don't. The doctors said... She broke off. He waited for her to finish. She kept silent. Don't be an accomplice. She still said nothing. He blessed them and left as quickly as possible. The woman had handled the beads with fingers that knew them. There was nothing he could say to her that she didn't already know. The Conference of Foreign Ministers on Guam has just ended. No joint policy statement has yet been issued. The ministers are returning to their capitals. The importance of this conference and the suspense with which the world awaits the results cause this commentator to believe that the conference is not yet ended, but only recessed so that the foreign ministers may confer with their governments for a few days. An earlier report, which alleged that the conference was breaking up amid bitter invective, has been denied by the ministries. First Minister Rekol had only one statement for the press. I'm going back to talk to the Regency Council, but the weather's been pleasant here. I may come back later to fish. The 10-day waiting period ends today, but it is generally held that the ceasefire agreement will continue to be observed. Mutual annihilation is the alternative. 2 cities have died, but it is to be remembered that neither side answered with a saturation attack. The Asian rulers contend that an eye was taken for an eye. Our government insists that the explosion in E21 was not an Atlantic missile, but for the most part there is a weird and brooding silence from both capitals. There has been little waving of the bloody shirt, few cries for wholesale vengeance, a kind of dumb fury because murder has been done, because lunacy prevails, but neither side wants total war. Defense remains at battle alert. The General Staff has issued an announcement, almost an appeal to the effect that we will not use the worst if Asia likewise refrains. But the announcement says further, if they use dirty fallout, we shall reply in kind, and in such force that no creature will live in Asia for 1,000 years. Strangely, the least hopeful note of all comes not from Guam, but from the Vatican at New Rome. After the Guam conference ended, it was reported that Pope Gregory ceased to pray for peace in the world. 2 special masses were sung in the basilica, the Exsurge Quaere ab Dormis, Mass against the heathen, and the Reminiscere, Mass in time of war. Then, the report says His Holiness retired to the mountains to meditate and pray for justice. And now, a word from... Turn it off! Zurchi groaned. The young priest who was with him snapped off the set and stared, wide-eyed, at the abbot. I don't believe it! What, about the Pope? I didn't either, but I heard it earlier, and New Rome has had time to deny it. They haven't said a word. What does it mean? Isn't that obvious? The Vatican Diplomatic Service is on the job. Evidently, they sent in a report on the Guam conference. Evidently, it horrified the Holy Father. What a warning! What a gesture! It was more than a gesture. His Holiness isn't chanting battle masses for dramatic effect. Besides, most people would think he means against the heathen on the other side of the ocean and justice for our side. Or if they know better, they'll still mean that themselves. He buried his face in his hands and rubbed them up and down. Sleep. What sleep, Father Leahy, do you remember? I haven't seen a human face in 10 days that didn't have black circles under its eyes. I could hardly doze last night for somebody screaming over in the guest house. Lucifer's no Sandman, that's true. What are you staring at out that window? Xerxes demanded sharply. That's another thing. Everybody keeps looking at the sky, staring up and wondering. If it's coming, you won't have time to see it until the flash, and then you'd better not be looking. Stop it. It's unhealthy. Father Leahy turned away from the window. Yes, Reverend Father. I wasn't watching for that, though. I was watching the buzzards. Buzzards? There have been lots of them all day. Dozens of buzzards just circling. Where? Over the Green Star camp, down the highway. That's no omen, then. That's just healthy vulture appetite. I'm going out for some air. In the courtyard, he met Mrs. Grayles. She carried a basket of tomatoes, which she lowered to the ground at his approach. I brought you somewhat, Father Xerxes, she told him. I saw your sign being down and some poor girl inside the gate, so I reckon you'd not mind a visit by your old tomato woman. I bought you some tomatoes, see? Thank you, Mrs. Grayles. The sign's down because of the refugees, but that's all right. You'll have to see Brother Elton about the tomatoes, though. He does the buying for our kitchen. Oh, not for buying, Father. I brought 'em to you for free. You've got lots to feed with all the poor things you're putting up, so they're for free. Where'll I put 'em? The emergency kitchen's in the... But no, leave them there. I'll get someone to carry them to the guest house. I poured 'em myself. I ported 'em this far. She hoisted the basket again. Thank you, Mrs. Grayles. He turned to go. Father, wait, she called. A minute, Your Honor, just a minute of your time. The abbot suppressed a groan. I'm sorry, Mrs. Grayles, but it's as I told you. He stopped, stared at the face of Raphael. For a moment he had imagined, had Brother Joshua been right about it? But surely no. It's a matter for your parish and diocese, and there's nothing I can... No, Father, not that, she said. It be somewhat else I wanted to ask of ye. There! It had smiled. He was certain of it. Would you hear my confession, Your Honor? Oh, hang on. My mic's falling down again. God damn. I'm so sorry. Okay. Lord. Would you hear my confession, Father? Beg shrivness for bothering ye, but I'm sad for my naughties, and I would add it you as it shrives me. Xerxes hesitated. Oh, why not, Father Cello? I tell you truthful, Your Honor, it's that the man is an occasion of sin for me. I go meaning well for the man, but I look once on his face and forget myself. God love him, but I can't. If he's so offended you, you'll have to forgive him. Forgive, that I do, but at a goodly distance. He's an occasion of sin for me, I'll tell, for I go losing me temper with him on sight. Xerxes chuckled. All right, Mrs. Grayles, I'll hear your confession, but I've got something I have to do first. Meet me in the Lady Chapel in about half an hour. The first booth. Will that be all right? Aye, and bless ye, Father. She nodded profusely. Abbot Zerchi could have sworn that the Rachel head mirrored the nods ever so slightly. He dismissed the thought and walked over to the garage. A postulant brought out the car for him. He climbed in, dialed his destination, and sank back wearily into the cushions while the automatic controls engaged the gears and nosed the car toward the gate. In passing the gate, the abbot saw the girl standing at the roadside. The child was with her. Zerchi jabbed at the cancel button. The car stopped. "Waiting," said the robot controls. The girl wore a cast that enclosed her hips from the waist to the left knee. She was leaning on a pair of crutches and panting at the ground. Somehow, she had got out of the guest house and through the gate, but she was obviously unable to go any further. The child was holding on to one of her crutches and staring at the traffic on the highway. Zerchi opened the car door and climbed out slowly. She looked up at him, but turned her glance quickly away. "What are you doing out of bed, child?" he breathed. "You're not supposed to be up, not with that hip. Just where did you think you were going?" She shifted her weight, and her face twisted with pain. "To town," she said. "I've got to go. It's urgent." "Not so urgent that somebody couldn't go do it for you. I'll get brother—" "No, father, no. Nobody else can do it for me. I've got to go to town." She was lying. He felt certain she was lying. "All right, then," he said. "I'll take you to town. I'm driving in anyway." "No, I'll walk. She took a step and gasped. He caught her before she fell. "Not even with St. Christopher holding your crutches could you walk to town, child. Come now, let's get you back to bed." "I've got to get to town, I tell you!" she shrieked angrily. The child, frightened by its mother's anger, began crying monotonously. She tried to calm its fright, but then wilted. "All right, father. Will you drive me to town?" "You shouldn't be going at all." "I tell you, I've got to go." "All right, then. Let's help you in. The baby. Now you." The child screamed hysterically when the priest lifted it into the car beside the mother. It clung to her tightly and resumed the monotonous sobbing. Because of the loose, moist dressings and the singed hair, the child's sex was difficult to determine at a glance, but Abbot Zerchi guessed it to be a girl. He dialed again. The car waited for a break in the traffic, then swerved onto the highway and into the mid-speed lane. 2 minutes later, as they approached the Green Star encampment, he dialed for the slowest lane. 5 monks paraded in front of the tent area in a solemn, hooded picket line. They walked to and fro in procession beneath the Mercy Camp sign, but they were careful to stay on the public right-of-way. Their freshly painted signs read, "Abandon every hope, ye who enter here." Zerchi had intended to stop to talk to them, but with the girl in the car, he contented himself with watching as they drifted past. With their habits and their hoods and their slow funeral procession, the novices were indeed creating the desired effect. Whether the Green Star would be sufficiently embarrassed to move the camp away from the monastery was doubtful, especially since a small crowd of hecklers, as it had been reported to the abbey, had appeared earlier in the day to shout insults and throw pebbles at the signs carried by the pickets. There were 2 police cars parked at the side of the highway, and several officers stood nearby to watch with expressionless faces. Since the crowd of hecklers had appeared quite suddenly, and since the police cars had appeared immediately afterwards, and just in time to witness a heckler trying to seize a picket's sign, and since a Green Star official had thereupon gone huffing off to get a court order, the abbot suspected that the heckling had been as carefully staged as the picketing to enable the Green Star officer to get his writ. It would probably be granted, but until it was served, Abbot Zerchi meant to leave the novices where they were. He glanced at the statue which the camp workers had erected near the gate. It caused a wince. He recognized it as one of the composite human images derived from mass psychological testing, in which subjects were given sketches and photographs of unknown people and asked such questions as, "Which would you like most to meet?" and "Which do you think would make the best parent?" or "Which would you want to avoid?" or "Which do you think is the criminal?" From the photographs selected as the most or the least in terms of the questions, a series of average faces, each to evoke a first-glance personality judgment, had been constructed by computer from the mass test results. This statue, Zerchi was dismayed to notice, bore a marked similarity to some of the most effeminate images by which mediocre or worse than mediocre artists had traditionally misrepresented the personality of Christ. The sweet, sick face, blank eyes, simpering lips, and arms spread wide in a gesture of embrace. The hips were broad as a woman's, and the chest hinted at breasts, unless those were only folds in the cloak. "Dear Lord of Golgotha," Abbot Zerchi breathed, "is that all the rabble imagine you to be?" He could, with effort, imagine the statue saying, "Suffer the little children to come unto me," but he could not imagine it saying, "Depart from me into everlasting fire, accursed ones," or flogging the money changers out of the temple. What question, he wondered, had they asked their subjects that conjured in the rabble mind this composite face? It was only anonymously a Christus. The leg end of the pedestal said, "Comfort," but surely the green star must have seen the resemblance to the traditional pretty Christus of poor artists. But they stuck it in the back of a truck with a red flag tied to its great toe, and the intended resemblance would be hard to prove. The girl had one hand on the door handle. She was eyeing the car's controls. Zerchi swiftly dialed fast lane. The car shot ahead again. She took her hand from the door. "Lots of buzzards today," he said quietly, glancing at the sky out the window. The girl sat, expressionless. He studied her face for a moment. "Are you in pain, daughter?" "It doesn't matter." "Offer it to heaven, child." She looked at him coldly. "You think it would please God?" "If you offer it, yes. I cannot understand a God who is pleased by my baby's hurting." The priest winced. No. It is not the pain that is pleasing to God, child. It is the soul's endurance in faith and hope and love in spite of bodily afflictions that pleases heaven. Pain is like negative temptation. God is not pleased by temptations that afflict the flesh. He is pleased when the soul rises above the temptation and says, "Go, Satan." It's the same with pain, which is often a temptation to despair, anger, loss of faith. Save your breath, Father. I'm not complaining. The baby is. But the baby doesn't understand your sermon. She can hurt, though. She can hurt, but she can't understand. What can I say to that? The priest wondered numbly. Tell her again that man was given preternatural impassibility once, but threw it away in Eden. That the child was a cell of Adam, and therefore it was true, but she had a sick baby, and she was sick herself, and she wouldn't listen. Don't do it, daughter. Just don't do it. I'll think about it, she said coldly. I had a cat once, when I was a boy, the abbot murmured slowly. He was a big gray tomcat with shoulders like a small bulldog and a head and neck to match, and that sort of slouchy insolence that makes some of them look like the devil's own. He was pure cat. Do you know cats? A little. Cat lovers don't know cats. You can't love all cats if you know cats, and the ones you can love if you know them are the ones that the cat lovers don't even like. Zeke was that kind of cat. This has a moral, of course. She was watching him, suspiciously. Only that I killed him. Stop. Whatever you're about to say, stop. A truck hit him, crushed his back legs. He dragged himself under the house. Once in a while, he'd make a noise like a cat fight and thrash around a little. But mostly, he just lay quietly and waited. He ought to be destroyed, they kept telling me. After a few hours, he dragged himself from under the house, crying for help. He ought to be destroyed, they said. I wouldn't let them do it. They said it was cruel to let him live, so finally I said I'd do it myself if it had to be done. I got a gun and a shovel and took him out to the edge of the woods. I stretched him out on the ground while I dug a hole. Then I shot him through the head. It was a small-bore rifle. Zeke thrashed a couple of times, then got up and started dragging himself towards some bushes. I shot him again. It knocked him flat, so I thought he was dead and put him in the hole. After a couple of shovels of dirt, Zeke got up and pulled himself out of the hole and started for the bushes again. I was crying louder than the cat. I had to kill him with the shovel. I had to put him back in the hole and use the blade of the shovel like a cleaver, and while I was chopping with it, Zeke was still thrashing around. They told me later it was just spinal reflex, but I didn't believe it. I knew that cat. He wanted to get to those bushes and just lie there and wait. I wish to God that I had only let him get to those bushes and die the way a cat would if you would just let it alone, with dignity. I never felt right about it. Zeke was only a cat, but... Shut up! She whispered. But even the ancient pagans noticed that nature imposes nothing on you that nature doesn't prepare you to bear. If that is true, even of a cat, then is it not more perfectly true of a creature with rational intellect and will, whatever you may believe of heaven? Shut up, damn you! Shut up! She hissed. If I'm being a little brutal, said the priest, then it is to you, not to the baby. The baby, as you say, can't understand, and you, as you say, are not complaining. Therefore, you are asking me to let her die slowly and... No, I'm not asking you. As a priest of Christ, I am commanding you by the authority of Almighty God not to lay hands on your child, not to offer her life in sacrifice to a false god of expedient mercy. I do not advise you, I adjure and command you in the name of Christ the King. Is that clear? Dom Zerchi had never spoken with such a voice before, and the ease with which the words came to his lips surprised even the priest. As he continued to look at her, her eyes fell. For an instant he had feared that the girl would laugh in his face. When Holy Church occasionally hinted that she still considered her authority to be supreme over all nations and superior to the authority of states, men in these times tended to snicker. And yet the authenticity of the command could still be sensed by a bitter girl with a dying child. It had been brutal to try to reason with her, and he regretted it. A simple direct command might accomplish what persuasion could not. She needed the voice of authority now, more than she needed persuasion. He could see it by the way she had wilted, although he had spoken the command as gently as his voice could manage. They drove into the city. Zerchi stopped to post a letter, stopped at St. Michael's to speak for a few minutes with Father Cello about the refugee problem, stopped again at ZDI for a copy of the latest civil defense directive. Each time he returned to the car, he half expected the girl to be gone, but she sat quietly, holding the baby, and absently stared toward infinity. Are you going to tell me where you wanted to go, child? He asked, at last. Nowhere. I've changed my mind. He smiled. But you were so urgent about getting to town. Forget it, Father. I've changed my mind. Good, and then we'll go back home. Why don't you let the sisters take care of your daughter for a few days? I'll think about it. The car sped back along the highway toward the Abbey. As they approached the Green Star camp, he could see that something was wrong. The pickets were no longer marching their tour. They had gathered in a group and were talking, or listening, to the officers and a third man that Zerchi could not identify. He switched the car over to the slow lane. One of the novices saw the car, recognized it, and began waving his sign. Dom Zerchi had no intention of stopping while the girl was in the car, but one of the officers stepped out into the slow lane just ahead of them and pointed his traffic baton at the vehicle's obstruction detectors. The autopilot reacted automatically and brought the car to a stop. The officer waved the car off the road. Zerchi could not disobey. The two police officers approached, paused to note license numbers and demand papers. One of them glanced in curiosity at the girl and the child, took note of the red tickets. The other waved toward the now stationary picket line. "So you're the bejesus behind all this, are you?" he grunted at the abbot. "Well, the gentleman in the brown tunic over there has a little news for you. I think you'd better listen." He jerked his head toward a chubby courtroom type who came pompously toward them. The child was crying again. The mother stirred restlessly. "Officers, this girl and baby aren't well. I'll accept the process, but please let us drive on back to the Abbey now. Then I'll come back alone." The officer looked at the girl again. "Ma'am?" She stared toward the camp and looked up at the statue towering over the entrance. "I'm getting out here," she told them tonelessly. "You'll be better off, ma'am," said the officer, eyeing the red tickets again. "No!" Dom Zerchi caught her arm. "Child, I forbid you!" The officer's hand shot out to seize the priest's wrist. "Let go!" he snapped. Then, softly, "Ma'am, are you his ward or something?" "No." "Where do you get off forbidding the lady to get out?" the officer demanded. "We're just a little impatient with you, mister, and it had better be—" Zerchi ignored him and spoke rapidly to the girl. She shook her head. "The baby, then. Let me take the baby back to the sisters. I insist." "Ma'am, is that your child?" the officer asked. The girl was already out of the car, but Zerchi was holding the child. The girl nodded. "She's mine." "Has he been holding you prisoner or something?" "No." "What do you want to do, ma'am?" She paused. "Get back in the car," Dom Zerchi told her. "You cut that tone of voice, mister," the officer barked. "Lady, what about the kid?" "We're both getting out here," she said. Zerchi slammed the door and tried to start the car, but the officer's hand flashed in through the window, hit the cancel button, and removed the key. "Attempted kidnapping?" one officer grunted to the other. "Maybe," said the other, and opened the door. "Now let go of the woman's baby." "To let it be murdered here?" the abbot asked. "You'll have to use force." "Go around to the other side of the car, Fall." "No!" "Now, just a little baton under the armpit. That's it. Pull. All right, lady. There's your kid. No, I guess you can't. Not with those crutches. Cors. Where's Cors? Hey, Doc!" Abbot Zerchi caught a glimpse of a familiar face coming through the crowd. "Hey, lift the kid out while we hold down this nut, will you?" Doctor and priest exchanged a silent glance, and then the baby was lifted from the car. The officers released the abbot's wrists. One of them turned and found himself hemmed in by novices with upraised signs. He interpreted the signs as potential weapons, and his hand dropped to his gun. "Back up!" he snapped. Bewildered, the novices moved back. "Get out!" The abbot climbed out of the car. He found himself facing the chubby court official. The latter tapped him on the arm with a folded paper. "You have been served with the restraining order, which I am required by the court to read and explain to you. Here is your copy. The officers are witnesses that you have been confronted with it, so you cannot resist service." "Oh, give it here." "That's the right attitude. Now, you are directed by the court as follows. Whereas the plaintiff alleges that a great public nuisance has been—" "Throw the signs in the ash barrel over there," Zerchi instructed his novices, "unless somebody objects. Then climb in the car and wait." He paid no attention to the reading of the order, but approached the officers while the process server trailed behind, reading in a monotonous staccato. "Am I under arrest?" "We're thinking about it." "And to appear before this court on the aforesaid date to show cause why an injunction." "Any particular charge?" "We could make 4 or 5 charges stick if you want it that way." Cors came back through the gate. The woman and her child had been escorted into the camp area. The doctor's expression was grave, if not guilty. "Listen, Father," he said. "I know how you feel about all this, but—" Abbot Zerchi's fist shot out at the doctor's face in a straight right jab. It caught Cors off balance, and he sat down hard in the driveway. He looked bewildered. He snuffled a few times. Suddenly, his nose leaked blood. The police had the priest's arms pinned behind him. "And herein fail not," the process server jabbered on, "lest a decree pro confessor—" "And take him over to the car," said one of the officers. The car toward which the abbot was led was not his own, but the police cruiser. "The judge will be a little disappointed in you," the officer told him sourly. "Now stand still right there and be quiet. One move and you go in the locks." The abbot and the officer waited by the cruiser, while the process server, the doctor, and the other officer conferred in the driveway. Kors was pressing a handkerchief to his nose. They talked for 5 minutes. Thoroughly ashamed, Zerchi pressed his forehead against the metal of the car and tried to pray. It mattered little to him at the moment what they might decide to do. He could think only of the girl and the child. He was certain she had been ready to change her mind, had needed only the command, "I, a priest of God, adjure thee," and the grace to hear it. If only they had not forced him to stop where she could witness God's priest summarily overruled by Caesar's traffic cop. Never to him had Christ's kingship seemed more distant. "All right, mister, you're a lucky nut, I'll say that." Zerchi looked up. "What?" "Dr. Kors refuses to file a complaint. He says he had one coming. Why did you hit him?" "Ask him." "We did. I'm just trying to decide whether we take you in or just give you the summons. The court officer says you're well known hereabouts. What do you do?" Zerchi reddened. "Doesn't this mean anything to you?" He touched his pectoral cross. "Not when the guy wearing it punches somebody in the nose. What do?" Zerchi swallowed the last of his pride. "I am the abbot of the Brothers of St. Leibowitz at the abbey you see down the road." "Okay, that gives you a license to commit assault." "I'm sorry. If Dr. Kors will hear me, I'll apologize. If you give me a summons, I promise to appear." "Fall?" The jail's full of DPs. "Listen, if we just forget the whole thing, will you stay away from this place and keep your gang out there where they belong?" "Yes." "All right, get moving. But if you so much as drive past here and spit, that'll be it." "Thank you." A calliope was playing somewhere in the park as they drove away, and looking back, Zerchi saw that the carousel was turning. One officer mopped his face, clapped the process server on the back, and they all went to their cars and drove away. Even with 5 novices in the car, Zerchi was alone with his shame. All right, we'll stop there for now, and then we'll read the last 2 chapters next time. They're not too long. Probably take about as long as this reading did to get both of them in. As always, thank you to Aindulmedir. You can find him on Bandcamp, YouTube, and Spotify. Go show him some love. It's very gracious of him to let us use his music this way. And he's a really nice guy with a lot of good music, so I listen to him all the time. And as always, shoot me an email if you got any fun ideas for public domain sci-fi or fantasy, maybe a little horror that you might like read. And next week, like I said, we'll be finishing up the book, so stay tuned for that. All right, folks, take it easy and have a good rest of the week. Catch you later.